Here we come, blue and white, and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight, and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job, and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Carlisle United, the team that's on the ball. Carlisle United, the team for one and all. You're looking good, and we're with you all the way. You'll hear us singing every time you play.
Here Ken Les and Neil with a pass so true. To ball the stone and Clark's in view. There's a cross and a run.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode 1 of, I'm going to put a fanfare in afterwards for this, Dan, the BRUNTON BUGLE. We finally given it a name. A podcast focusing on the trials and tribulations of Carlisle United Football Club. From Dean Walling to Andy Walker and Ivor Brodis to Jamie Burt, we've got it covered. As usual, I'm joined by one of my co-hosts, and this week it's Dan McLennan. Dan, how's it going?
Not too bad, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, pretty good. It's a bit unusual, isn't it, really, the last few months, having no football to go to? But
yeah, who would have thought after the game against Newport that would be our season finished, you know?
Yeah, not a bad way to end the season, but a bit of a
no,
shame.
we
Really,
played quite well that night, to be fair, didn't we? I know originally, I think we'd planned to do our next pod after that game the following Saturday from memory.
Yeah, I think that was the next one we were looking at. In fact, no, it wasn't, because I was supposed to be the Berlin Derby that weekend.
That's right,
which,
yes.
Yeah, bit of bitter memory that for me now, so
Yeah.
but never mind. We've finally given the podcast a name, thanks to all the suggestions we received. I think someone did suggest the name Brunton Bugle, but I haven't been able to track it down. I knew you were suggesting it, Dan.
Yeah,
So,
there did used to be a club publication in I think it was the late 80s, that was called the Brunton Bugle. It was a sort of a short-lived sort of newspaper-style letter from memory.
Yeah.
You don't see many of them about, so if anyone does have any lying about, feel free to give me a shout.
Yeah, that'll be a good bit of memorabilia to get, definitely.
Yeah. Just while we mention memorabilia, for anyone listening, as a member of the Carlisle United supporters groups, I've sort of taken charge of collecting, collating and cataloguing, the 3 C's, any unwanted Carlisle United memorabilia. Obviously, with the 2 floods in 05 and 15, the club lost a hell of a lot of stuff, and they're trying to rebuild their basically their history, you know. So
Yeah.
if anyone does have anything, just get in touch through the website or on our email, and I'll get back to you.
Yep, definitely. I would 100% advise to do that if you've got anything that you're quite happy for the club to have. That'd be great. Did you like the 4 names that I mentioned in the introduction there?
Yes, an interesting assortment.
Yeah, I'm going to try and do a different 4 each episode and see how desperate I get with some of them.
We've got plenty of 1-game wonders to go through.
Well, I thought, put a couple of good ones in and a couple of duds, shall we say?
Yeah.
Andy Walker obviously was a short-lived signing, wasn't he, in the 99-00 season? I think under Wilkinson.
Yeah, it would have been about then.
Yeah. Anyway. So before we get started, I'd like to give everyone an idea of what we're going to be doing going forward with the podcast. So, as I'll be covering later, it's unclear as to when League 2 football will be returning, whether it's with or without fans. So we're going to try and record these episodes remotely with a variety of guests and maybe an interview with ex-CUFC players and staff thrown in. We'll do some semi-regular newsy style episodes looking at the latest developments at CUFC and in the EFL as we get them. We'll also be doing some feature episodes covering a variety of topics, things like looking back at great seasons, profiles on all-time great players, classic matches, and looking at other topics like kits and worst loan signings and stuff like that. So that's the boring introduction out of the way. Let's get started with episode 1. Okay, Dan, so the first thing we're going to discuss today is United's retained list. Now, it's been a few weeks since it was published, and apologies for not recording sooner, but we've had a few technical difficulties, plus we wanted to see if there was any further developments from the EFL, and as you'll see later on, there's been pretty much nothing. We'll start off chatting about those that have been let go. Now, there's a few names in there that we expected to go: Kieran Kerr, Louis Gray, and Nathaniel Knight Percival. No major surprises there for those 3. we fully expected that they were going to go. Another who maybe wasn't a surprise but a shame to see go is Kelvin Atuwu. Was excellent last season, but that injury at Grimsby has just ruined his final year with us, really, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, age isn't on his side either. You know, that the Kelvin Atuwu of the season before last would have been an asset. After over a year out, you have to wonder what A, his fitness will be like, and B, his mental state after such a long injury. So, I mean, I think most of us expected that Atuwu will move on. The three you mentioned earlier, no complaints there either. You know, Kerr was your typical given 1 year, hasn't pushed on. He'll probably end up at Workington or Penrith or Kendal or somewhere.
Yeah,
you know,
you'd have thought so. Yeah. I think with Atuwu, it is a real shame, though, isn't it? Because that first season he struggled to settle in, really, didn't he? But the second season he was outstanding and just really unlucky to pick that injury up right at the end. And yeah, that's probably explains why we're able to get him, really, is the fact that he was so injury prone throughout his career. Yeah,
he's one of those players who he reminds me a bit of Danny Cadamartri. I always said a fit Danny Cadamartri would have been nowhere near Carlisle United.
Of course.
And obviously, he had his injury problems when he was with us. But just talking Etu being midfield leads us on to, we're basically going to have a brand new midfield next season. You know, Nathan Thomas has gone back to Sheffield United. Mike Jones has been released. The likes of McCurdy and Scoogle. It's going to be all change in the centre of the park.
Oh, definitely. It's an area when later on we'll look at the current makeup of the squad, which is looking very young at the moment. We'll discuss that later. But I think the next sort of group of players that have been let go, you'd say the ones that never really stamped down a place in the team, so probably the right decision to let them go, even if there is a bit of potential there. So that's, for me, the three is Iredale, Scoogle and Sagaf. Sagaf's maybe the one that a few fans will be a bit miffed about seeing going, but he never really kicked on after that good start, did he?
No, he flitted in and out under Presley, and I think it was fairly obvious early on under Chris Beach that Sagaf didn't really fit into his plans. I know there was a bit of an alluding to him maybe not trying as hard in training if he wanted to get into the team. We'll never know the truth about that because it's always hearsay with that sort of stuff.
He never really pinned down a position, did he, either, really? That was one of his other issues.
No.
Played up front for a bit, played as wing back as well. And
I think also the fact that we played the front three with the likes of Thomas and McCurdy didn't really fit in with the way Sagaf would play. He sort of struck you as a number 10 style player, which we didn't really utilise much last season. No. And again, that's probably the problem that's affected Scoogle. You know, he's never really settled in a position. He's probably too small to play deeper central.
Yeah.
And we haven't played the right system for him to play behind the striker, which is probably where he would have looked best.
Yeah, he's got plenty of technical ability, Scoogle, hasn't he? He's just one of those players where you struggle to fit him in a team like ours, don't you, really, when you need players to do a job for you.
I think with the likes of Scoogle, you need to build a team around him as opposed to slotting him into a team. But it'd be interesting to see where he ends up. I've a feeling he could end up back up the road in Scotland.
Yeah, Championship.
Because I know there's one or two clubs fans were sort of quite vocal about we'd have him up here.
Yeah.
But and as for Iredale, I think Iredale was a solid enough League Two defender. But once Beach brought Anderton in, it was fairly obvious that Anderton was his first choice. And I think for Iredale, he was going to be on the bench at best, wasn't he?
Yeah, no. By all accounts, he's back in Australia now, isn't he? So I imagine he might be looking at getting himself a move over there, I'd have thought, and maybe playing up against Tom Aldred and Macaulay Gillespie next season.
Possibly. It wouldn't be the biggest surprise to see him end up in the A-League, where I don't think I'll watch a few games on a Saturday morning, and I'd quite fancy us if we played in it, to be honest.
Yeah.
By the odd imported player.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and finally we come to the final three, the ones that have probably caused the most consternation. Adam Collin, Mike Jones and Harry McCurdy. We'll start with Colin. he's been pretty much ever present in the league and non-trophy that we don't speak of cup games since he replaced Joe Fryer back in August 2018. Decision to bring Dewhurst in on loan on January suggested that Beach was already starting to plan for next season, wasn't he, in the goalkeeper position at least?
Yeah, I mean, Colin lives sort of between Mansfield and Nottingham by all accounts, and when he did sign for us 2 summers ago, he actually, people forget he actually came in as a number 2.
Yeah.
To Fryer, and obviously when Fryer got his bad injury, we were lucky to have that sort of experience to take over. I know there was a bit of fuss last summer about his. He wanted a better contract because he basically signed a number 2 contract, which on one side of the coin I could understand. On the other, he signed that contract. It's
one of those difficult balances, isn't it? You want to reward a player for doing so well, but at the same time you think you did sign that deal. So,
but I think he's been looking to go back down, sort of to the Midlands where he's based. So it's probably a mutual part, and he'll go with people's best wishes. Yeah,
and obviously the next one, McCurdy. Now, I think this is the one that's probably divided the fans most, because I was looking on the Be Justin Fear Not Facebook group the other day, and there's some fans who look at him as one of their villains as Carlisle fans, which I find a little bit unusual, but it's an interesting one that the fans have never quite took to him, have they?
He's definitely Marmite, isn't he? Yeah. You know what I mean? I was in the pro McCurdy camp, at the end of the day he was double-figure goals, not far behind with assists. Yes, he'd have quiet games where he'd be marked out of them and kicked all over the pitch. And yes, he did twine a bit when that happened, but, like for instance, the Cardiff home replay, if he's in the mood, he could terrorise any defence in this league.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, that Cardiff was a championship defence, and he had them on toast all night. They didn't know what to do with him, and people forget he's still officially the top scorer in this season's FA Cup.
FA Cup, yeah, he is. It's true that.
Yeah,
people forget that. But yeah.
No, I mean there was a bit of stuff with some fans. Was it Walsall where he scored, and there was a bit of
celebrate, did he? I think that was the issue.
Yeah, he just seemed a bit disjointed from the fan base ever since then. I mean,
I don't think he lacked effort, did he? I don't think he lacked effort. He was a hard worker.
I bumped into him down at the club when I was picking a ticket up for a friend, and he had a little chat with me, and he seemed a cracking kid, And I think people forget he was 21, 22, and his first full season of proper football. But I'm pretty sure he'll be easily snapped up. There'll be plenty of clubs will look and think,
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there were League One clubs looking at him. I really wouldn't. I think there'll be maybe one or two think he's maybe worth a punt on the wage.
Yeah.
As well. But he's one of those ones as well. I don't think he ever really settled up here personally as well. I think he lives down in Stoke, and he always seemed to be pining to get down south, really, didn't he? So it might be one of those ones that suits both parties, really. I know Chris Beach made some very specific comments on the radio about him, didn't he? And the fact that he wanted players who were committed to the club, and he didn't feel that Harry was committed.
Yeah, I actually think that was maybe a little bit harsh. I mean, at the end of the day, the lad's come to all his training sessions. He's played when he's been fit, and he's performed in a few of those games. But as you said, he didn't really want to be this far north, and he probably goes with most fans' best wishes, and you just know if he does sign for one of our rivals, he'll have the game of his life when we play.
The game of his life, he'll get booed off the pitch by our fans, so you can guarantee
he'll
it.
Probably score 2 goals, but get a red card. Probably take all the headlines.
Give 2 fingers to the B stand as well, probably, or something. But I'm surprised.
Yeah.
And finally, on to the last player to be let go. Probably the one that's the saddest a lot is Mike Jones, who had been looking in pretty decent shape under Beach. He'd fought his way back into the team, but he is 32. He's not getting any younger. We think he's got particular personal circumstances that mean being back down in the Manchester area, that area works better for him. So, again, might be one of those ones that suits both parties, but again, quite sad to see him go because he's been a brilliant servant over the last few years.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's a proper no nonsense, no fuss, solid professional, very fit lad by all accounts. You know, I think he's a personal trainer as a side sort of thing. I know when his name appeared on the list, there was fans of a few clubs, sort of, as you say, in the Manchester area, were like, hey, wouldn't mind him here, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't think he'll struggle to get a team, you know, despite how many players are going to be available. I think he's probably a little bit gutted because he always said he wanted to help Carlisle go up. I think that was a little bit of a mission for him, but
I think it's the club he's played for the most, I think. Could be wrong with that. I'll have to check the stats, but I have a feeling he's played more games for us than any other club, so it would make sense if he'd had a decent connection with us as well. So yeah, pretty sad to see Mike Jones go. Goes with all our best wishes, of course. So
yeah, and he's one of those that would get an actual decent round of applause when he returned, you know.
Okay, so we've looked at the players who've been released. Now let's move on to the ones who've been offered contracts. We'll start with Luis Alessandra because he's been offered a 1-year deal and has actually signed that 1-year deal now, with one of those famous options thrown into the bargain. Done pretty well since he's come up, hasn't he? So no real arguments there with him getting a new deal.
Yeah, no nonsense, solid League 2 player, knows what it's about in this division, bit of experience.
Bit of nous, isn't it, really? That's what he's got.
Yeah, he's not going to score you 15, 20 goals, but I bet he's involved in 15, 20 goals. Not even last ball, but starting the move. You know, he holds it up well, he lays it off, and he seems to have a knack of knowing where to put it, you know. So
yeah, like Mike Jones, he keeps himself in good shape, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he's versatile as well, you know. He can play up front, he can play at 10, he can play on the sides, he can play midfield, you know. He's not a bad option to have in the squad, you know. I know one or two fans don't seem overly keen on him, but I think if we get a full pre-season, I think he could keep a few of them quiet next season.
Yeah, I think he's a decent player, and for me, I'm happy enough to have him in there. Good bit of experience up front. Kind of play, probably not going to moan if he's on the bench for a few games as well. He's not going to be too disappointed. He's going to work hard to get himself back in the team.
No, definitely. Yeah.
No massive shock to see Gethin Jones offered another 12-month deal. He might have been looking in January and thinking, you know, I saw you in March even when the coronavirus kicked in and thinking, I wish I'd signed that 18-month deal in January instead of the 6-month one he did. But as it is, he's been offered the extra year anyway. Decent player, not signed the deal yet. I'd imagine with the way things are, you're probably looking at it and think to himself, well, you know, other clubs are probably not going to be in a great state at the moment, so if they're offering me a 12-month deal, I should probably consider taking it. Yeah,
I mean, he's quite clearly one of the better right-backs in League 2. I think he played pretty much every minute once he came in as well, didn't he? He's clearly another who's a fit lad and looks after himself, and it wouldn't surprise me if one or two clubs maybe had a little look at him.
Yeah,
it's kind of whether they can move for him, you know.
I think you've previously mentioned Salford, haven't you? That would be a club that might.
Yeah, I know. When we were talking between ourselves, you would imagine someone like Salford having a look, as I know they've released a right back recently, but hopefully he signs on and stays. Yeah,
his adaptability is a big key as well, isn't it? Because he can play right back, he can play left back. He can play as a holding midfield. I'd imagine he could probably play centre back if you asked him to play there as well. So he's the kind of player who's a really important one to have in the squad. Okay, now on to the other two players who've been offered new deals. Now these are the ones that have caused probably the most discussion in the whole release list.
Definitely.
Jack Bridge and Byron Webster. We'll start with Byron Webster because actually, as much as it has caused a bit of discussion, I think he's probably earned the right to have this deal because, yes, he started out pretty duff in the first half of the season. No arguments about that. He was pretty dreadful in some games. He was making a lot of mistakes. But for the last few months of the season, I think he's probably been one of our best players. I think he genuinely, him and Hayden have looked a really good partnership potential there to build something really solid. He's got years of experience as well, and it can be difficult to find players like that who settle down. Sometimes they can take a while to settle. So now he's settled. I think it's probably a sensible move to give him that extra year.
I think one thing a lot of us forget with Webster as well, when he did come to us at the start of the season, he hadn't played that much football in the couple of years previously due to his injuries.
That's true.
And I often wondered if that was maybe a factor, and because the team was in such a transitional stage, he just didn't settle straight away, whereas once we got into the new year and we sort of had a bit more settled side, he definitely calmed down. The emergence of Hayden, as you mentioned, that's definitely been a help. You would actually think Hayden was the more experienced player the way he finished the season, but it'd be interesting to see if he takes his offer, because I just think he might not. I don't know why. I just think he might not. But no, definitely on second half of the season, he probably deserves a chance for another year.
Yeah, Jack Bridge. Now, he's an interesting one because you'll remember when we went to Orient away, first half of the season. I can't remember if he came on or if he started the game, but he was having a bit of a stinker, and I was giving him some proper jip from the stand. And it wasn't until afterwards when we saw this group of people who sat in front of us walked to the front and went and shook his hand, we realised we'd been sat behind his family for the whole game and we'd been giving him stick, which is typical of us when we go to games, really, isn't it? But it's an interesting one, because I don't think there's much doubt that technically wise, and the way he can control a ball and dribble and everything, he's a good footballer. He's got ability, but it's his decision making, and he's
one of these.
His best position is as well. It's the problem, isn't it?
Because of his ability, he would probably do better at League One level than League Two.
Yeah.
Which I know sounds a bit daft, but where you just get that half a second more on the ball, he would actually probably be more effective at League One level. I know towards the last couple of games, he played wide right a couple of times, and he definitely looked a lot better player there. Definitely.
That game at Forest Green, I think, was one of the best examples of it. He looked excellent that game, and you thought, all right, maybe there is a player in there. And Beach has clearly watched him in training. He hasn't started him every game, but he's seen enough to make him think, actually, this lad is worth giving another year, and maybe we'll work. And actually, I think the biggest problem for him as well is he needs to pin down a position. I don't think he's got enough about him to play as a central midfielder. I think the game passes him by a little bit too much in that position. Whereas I think if you put him on the wing, he's got a clear area where he knows he has to work. And he has got ability. He can beat him, man, and he can put a cross in. So, he's one that I probably would have let go, if I'm brutally honest. But I can see the reasoning why, and I think he deserves another chance maybe to prove that he has got the ability to play for us.
Yeah, I can see Bridge staying. A lot of it'll be interesting to see how Chris Beach sets us up next season, because with the personnel we had this season just finished, we suited playing with McCurdy and Thomas where they played. Now both of them gone, I wondered if we'll see a change to maybe a more 4-4-2 type setup, or will he keep a 4-3-3, or will he maybe even go 3-5-2, but
we haven't really got anything to work on, have we? Because he's not been a manager before, so we don't know exactly what his thoughts are. Obviously, it depends on the recruitment as well, really, and who he can bring, and that'll be one of the key factors in whether he's able to play the formation he wants to play. But it's going to be an interesting few months in terms of that, I suppose, isn't it?
Definitely.
Right, well, that's wrapped up all the release list. So we'll just take a little quick break, and then we'll come back and look at the makeup of the squad for this season and discuss that a bit. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Brunton Bugle. Okay, so we've looked at the release list. Now it's time to look at the makeup of the squad for this season coming. So I'm going to run through the areas of the pitch: goalkeeper, defence, midfield, attack, and list who we've got in those positions.
I was going to say goalkeeper won't take very long.
The goalkeeper one's going to be very quick. But anyway, so let's go through them. So goalkeeper, none. Defence, Hayden, Hunt, Anderton, Barnes, G. Jones and Webster. Obviously there's stars in their names because we're not 100% sure yet. Birch, Lightfoot, Wilson. Midfield, Mellish, Guy, Charters, Dixon, Armstrong. An attack, Alessandra and Patrick. So, discussion point first up, no goalkeeper. that's the big one, isn't it, obviously? So there's a big gaping hole in the squad there. you would imagine Dewhurst is going to come back on loan, because it was clear that the reason he was brought in was to see how he fitted in and whether the club were keen to bring him back. And from what Beach has said since, he seems quite happy to bring him back if he can.
I'd have no problem with that, but the major question will be, is he experienced enough to be a League Two number one? You know what I mean? We've had the likes of Shamal George was a similar type of loan, coming from a big club, got his chance, clearly wasn't ready, and I think he's playing for Marine.
He was on loan at Marine this season, so that says a lot, really.
Yeah. If we do take Dewhurst with a view to number one, we could do with an experienced number two, just to help bring him on, but be ready to play if needed. You know, it'll be interesting to see. And there's not been many retained lists come out. I think there's about 10 or 11 in our league so far. It'll be interesting to see what keepers are available out there, because I think having two young lads would be a mistake. If we are going to have someone like Dewhurst, you'd sort of be looking for an Adam Collins type keeper, wouldn't you?
We got lucky a few years ago with that Shamal George situation, in that Jack Bonham actually in the end turned it out to be a fairly decent goalkeeper. But there was a stage where there was a bit of worry that we've got two keepers here who aren't quite ready to be playing first team football. That was the worry back then. Yeah.
And I would hope, if Dewhurst does come back, that the other keeper is our keeper and not from another team. Going into a season with two loan keepers as your main keepers is a very risky strategy.
Yeah. Maybe on a later episode we'll discuss some transfer. It's going to be difficult this summer because no one knows what's going to happen going forward with football. But I mean, I know one name that you always like to mention every summer is Cammy Bell, don't you? You always think he's one we should go for. Joe Fry is another name potentially.
Well, has Joe Fry ever played another game of football? Because he's still at Middlesbrough as far as we're aware. I've checked on their website a couple of times and I've not really seen him down as playing for the reserves, etc. You know, I think Middlesbrough had about 7 goalkeepers on the website, so you know, did they all take turns playing for the under-23s or something? But it'd be interesting to see where he's at, because
he looked good, didn't he?
He'll be coming on for mid-20s, and the lad's hardly played a game. You know, he's a typical academy player nowadays, sadly, where they get to nearly the mid-20s and they maybe played 20 games, if that, you know. But
he did look a good player though when he was on loan, I think.
Oh, yeah,
definitely. He only played 5 games, I know, but in those 5 games he looked like he had something about him.
Yeah, just going back to Cammy Bell, he's just one of those players. He's sort of become a journeyman around Scotland in the last 2 or 3 years after he was at Rangers. But he's from Dumfries, I think it is. He's just always struck me, similar to Greg Fleming actually, that he's just always struck me as one of them players that would end up playing for us at some point. And I think he actually ended this season at Queen's Park, which he's a better keeper than that level. I understand there was a bit of money involved from a sponsor or something. So
so defence, we're looking pretty well stocked there. A decent mix of experience and youth, if you include Jones and Webster as having signed. Let's just make a presumption there that right now, obviously no guarantee they will. There's a decent mix there, isn't there?
Well, you can basically split it into 2 camps. You've got your experienced, even though they're not very experienced, bar Webster. You've got your first choice would obviously be Jones and Anderton as fullbacks, and probably Hayden and Webster with Max Hunt being first replacement. You've got 5 players there. We know what they're about. And then the other 4 lads, which is Barnes, Birch, Lightfoot and Wilson, are all classed as developmental, seems to be the term for them nowadays. First year pros to me and you. And from what I understand, I think one's a right back, one's a left back and 2 are centre backs. So we've got, providing Jones and Webster do sign, we've got 2 left backs, 2 right backs, and 5 central defenders, and that's on the premise that you mentioned Mellish is classed as a midfielder now.
But he can play there, so you wonder if maybe you might look there and think, probably don't need to sign another defender, maybe. Or maybe just one in there, maybe just add a bit more.
Yeah, but well, obviously, like you say, it depends on whether Jones and Webster sign. If they do, I'd be very surprised to see many more defenders coming in.
No, definitely not.
Obviously, if they don't, we'll need a replacement. But no, we're pretty stocked there.
Yep. Midfield, lots of youth and promise, but really lacking in experience when you look there.
Yeah.
Mellish is a player, obviously, that Beach seemed really keen on in midfield. Guy, we didn't really get to see much of him, but he looked fairly solid from what we saw.
Yeah.
And then the other three, Charles, Dixon, and Armstrong. Well, Dixon really shone in pre-season. There's a couple of games he played, and then obviously had that bad injury, and you can't necessarily expect that he's going to play every game when he comes back straight away.
Yeah, of the young lads, I'll be quite honest, I don't really know much about Armstrong. I have asked a couple of lads who watch the youths a bit, and they said he's a decent enough player. Charters obviously sort of stepped up as our man on the bench when Branthwaite moved out the squad, having the old homegrown.
Yeah.
And to be fair to Charters, he came on, was it maybe just shy of a dozen times?
Yeah.
He didn't look out of place. He looked all right.
He slotted in like he was just a player. He didn't shine brightly in the way that Branthwaite would in games, but he looked solid enough.
Yeah. And that leaves us with Josh Dixon. He's been dreadfully unlucky with his 2 serious injuries in 2 seasons. By all accounts, he's recovered. And if he can come back firing on all cylinders and make an impact in friendlies like he did in that Hibs game originally last season, we'll hopefully have a good young prospect on our hands.
Definitely. And up top, we're looking very light at the moment, aren't we? Obviously, Alexander signing's good because it's a bit of experience there. Kind of player who's useful and play a few positions. And I have to say, I thought Amari Patrick actually looked quite impressive in a few of the games towards the end of the season. And listening to him talk on the official website over the summer, I think he's going to become a really popular player. He strikes me as a really good character. In the kind of sort of the way fans really took to players like, I'm trying to think down the years. People like you,
Keith Walwyn.
As I'd say, like your Rod Thomases or your Warren Aspinalls. I'm basically trying to think of players who are real characters and fans really took to them, really. And he's the kind of player, the way I get the impression from him.
Yeah. No, I'd also, it wouldn't be the biggest surprise to see Joshua Coyote come back on loan.
Yeah, I think he's one you'd expect, wouldn't you?
Yeah, because him and Patrick seem to start to be getting a little bit of an understanding when the season was curtailed, and both young lads, but with a wiser old head in Alessandra, might just learn a couple of things off him, and that would only be good for us.
I think of the other loan signings, we've mentioned previously that we don't expect Lofton or Lamola to be coming back anytime soon. Thomas, I think clearly he's keen to bring him back, but there's an issue there in terms of wages. I think he's towards the end of his contract with Sheffield United now, isn't he? I think it's the end of this summer.
Yeah,
but he's on a big wage, and you'd imagine there'd be League One clubs sniffing around.
Well, the worst thing that happened for us was Sheffield United getting promoted, because apparently his wage nearly doubled, which it was a hefty wage anyway, and it doubled again when they got promoted. So it's I
think we might still have a chance. I just think it depends on what interest is there.
I think it was basically doing a bit of groundwork, wasn't it? Just you're entitled to have a look, rightfully so, but if nothing comes, you're welcome here. It's not too far for you from home, and come and talk to us if nothing happens.
I think that's the bit that might work in our favour, the location-wise, because we saw he went to Shillingham on loan and clearly did not settle there at all. Ends up back with us on loan. It depends on which League One club show interest. I mean, that's the key thing. Let's say, even if like if Bradford showed interest, we might be in trouble there. We might not get him because it's a lot closer to home, much easier for him. So it depends really on that. Elliot Watt, be interesting to see where he ends up. I wouldn't be surprised if a League One club ended up with him.
Yeah, you could see him doing similar to Callum O'Hare, couldn't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Making that step up and then looking to push on again. As he clearly had a range of passing, and I always remember watching his debut at Cardiff, I think it was 10 minutes in, he was running around the pitch screaming orders, and you were like, you're not shy, lad, you know, you're clearly more than comfortable at this level, you know.
The contrast between him and Kenice Carroll in terms of ability when we watched the two of them was pretty light and day, wasn't it, really? When you look back at it now. But yeah, I think I agree. I think he'll end up at a high level. I think the positive we look at there, though, is that we've looked after him and he's done well here and he's settled in well. I'd imagine Wolves will look and say, that's a decent club we can loan players to.
And he's a Preston lad, isn't he? So it's not that far a trip for him, you know. And he clearly is also, was it a Scotland under 21? Was it?
I think he under 19s. He might have played for
19s. So yeah. So if he does keep getting call ups, obviously being based here would be handy for that. But I'll be honest, I think we're a bit of wishful thinking here.
Yeah, no, I don't think he'll be coming back, but I think Wolves might look at him and think, well, there's a club we can loan other players to.
Yeah, definitely.
By all accounts, they have a very good under-23 side. They've hoovered up a lot of good talent over the last few years, so they might be a club potentially that we develop good links with. Okay, so finally we're going to round up the CEFC section here. We're going to talk quickly about a few ex-Blues who are in the news this week, or the last few weeks at least. First up, former United keeper Michael Espy has turned down a new contract at SPL side Motherwell after 67 first-team appearances for them over the last couple of seasons. Rumoured destination is his boyhood club, Newcastle United, to be third-choice keeper. Good move for Mark if he gets that, really.
Yeah, a lot of Motherwell fans were sorry to see him go. I think he'd kept something like 17 clean sheets this season and was on course for the club record of 20, and there was a few who were a bit gutted that he never got the chance to do that. But he's a lad from the northeast. I think he started at Newcastle as a schoolboy, didn't he?
He got let go when he was 16, and that's when we picked him up.
Yeah. And I think if it is true, I think it would be it'd be the dream move for him, wouldn't it?
No brainer, isn't it? As well, you get paid what, $6-7 a week or something like that, or more, to sit on the bench, or not even sit on the bench in Newcastle. Be ready to step into games.
I've always been a Gillespie fan. If he did play a few games, I don't think he'd let anyone down. You know, he's a good, solid keeper.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep. Okay. Briefly, we'll touch on this one. Ex-United loanees Hayden White and Jordan Cook have been released by Mansfield and Grimsby, respectively. Cook's an unusual one, isn't it? Because you would have thought he would have kicked on after the way he played for us, but looking back at it, that's his best spell of his career was when he was on loan with us.
Yeah, it was. He ended up at, was it Charlton after Sunderland?
It was a strange
and
move.
It just never really happened, and he's sort of just flitted about since. And I actually got a look when I looked him up on Soccer Base. I think he was nearly 30, and I was like, bloody hell, you know. Yeah, when did he turn 30? He was. I'm sure he was only about 21 when he was here, you know. But
well, then you forget that was. It
was 8 years ago, wasn't it?
8 or 9 years ago now.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
But so that's an unusual one. And Hayden White, unusual one, isn't he? He blew hot and cold when he was with us. We've got full-backs, we don't need one of those. So
yeah. My abiding memory of Hayden White is the red card at Portsmouth.
One of the most brain-dead red cards I've seen in my life. He lodged in 2 foot for no reason.
One of the worst tackles ever in a Carlisle shirt. And
amazingly,
we've had some bad tackles.
And that wasn't the worst thing about that game, which is the most amazing thing. It was seeing George Iliev put on a Carlisle United shirt, because my God, he was dreadful. That lad. Yeah. Well, by all accounts, actually, Iliev, the only reason we had him on loan was because I think didn't we have to take him because we had Hayden White? That was the suggestion.
Yeah, some obscure
reason.
Nonsense.
Yeah. Finally, the last ex-United player we're going to talk about, probably the most interesting one actually, is former midfielder Mark Bridge Wilkinson, who's now just been appointed as Liverpool's new under-18s manager. 3 years he was in the Huddersfield Academy from after retiring in 2012, and then joined LFC, coached their under-14s in 2015. Spent the last 5 years there, and he's worked his way to the under-18s job. Done pretty well.
Yeah, not a bad gig for him. You know, I mean, it seems to be a lot of ex-players who are featured in these youth setups now. It would be interesting to see if anyone at the club knows him, because I would certainly like to get a couple of players from Liverpool into our squad.
Unfortunately,
But,
I think the main person who would know him has just left the club, unfortunately. That's the problem.
yeah.
Dolly, obviously, but yeah, I'm not sure
Yeah.
anyone else. Eric Kinder would probably know him, actually, to be
Yeah,
fair.
well, I
so-
would have thought Kinder would know him, but unfortunately, with sort of the level that Liverpool's and Man United's operate at now, it's very rare they're loan out to League Two. Sadly, these days, gone are the days of getting your Man United when we had that season with about 4 loanies.
Yeah, and the Ronnie Walwork days and stuff like that. But yeah, but no, it's good for Markbridge Wilkinson, and can't wait until Chris Beach is sacked and we get the chance to put him on the list of rumoured new managers in about 4 or 5 years, maybe.
It's always fun when we get a betting list up to see the names come in and out.
You wouldn't be surprised if he ended up on the list now, though. Now he's into slightly more senior.
In fact, next time it happens, I'm deliberately going to ask for the price on him just to get him on it.
Good stuff. Let's take a second here, actually, to say all the best to Neil Dalton, United's physio of many, many years, who's moved on to pastures new. Danny, I know you know Dolly pretty well. Really sad to see him go. Someone who's been part of the furniture Brunton Park for many years.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking getting on towards 30 years since he started as a YTS. I mean, I don't think a lot of people realise he actually was sort of like a half professional when he first, came.
I remember he was in the 94-95 programme. He was sponsored, wasn't he? He was one of the players who was sponsored.
Yeah. But no, he's been at the club forever, and not just his knowledge is, he is. When you say someone is Carlisle United, you probably would say he is. And everybody knows him in the town. There's not a local footballer hasn't rang him or texted him or went to him for advice on an injury. And no, it certainly shows how things have changed. There's. You would never have thought you'd be talking about someone like Dolly leaving Carlisle United, but no, he's off to Aberdeen by all accounts, and but at least he'll get a couple of European games out of it.
Yeah,
I mean,
a couple of little trips abroad, maybe.
Yeah, back end of Belarus or somewhere.
As long as he keeps Sam Cosgrove fit, ready for his move and sell on clause.
That can be his mission up there. But no, it's been a great servant to the club, and I'm sure I don't speak alone saying that all Carlisle fans wish him the very best in his future endeavours.
Yeah. So that rounds up the CFC news. We'll take another little break and then we'll go on to some EFL news, focusing mostly on what's happening with League Two. Okay, so we're back now and we'll move straight on to the topic of the end of the League Two season. Now, as you probably know, League Two clubs have agreed to bring the season to a premature end, with football having come to a halt due to the coronavirus pandemic in mid-March. Now, this is still subject to a vote, which we understand will take place at the special EGM of the EFL, bit of tongue twister there, next Tuesday, which is the 9th of June. The original plans appear to suggest that while the top three would still be promoted and the playoffs would take place, there would be no relegation. Now, that last part is the big sticking point. A few clubs have since come out to say they would still want relegation to happen. Notably Bradford, who have missed out on the playoffs as a result of the early finish, even though they were in close contention. So Danny, just some of your initial thoughts. I'm guessing you think it's the right decision to end it, but do you agree with Bradford on the relegation issue?
For me, definitely it was the right decision to end. I know we're not where we were as a country 8 weeks ago, but there was hundreds of people dying every day, and to be quite honest, playing games of football just seemed absurd. Obviously, at our level, the financial implications are massive, both in not having football and trying to stage football as a comeback. And I know there was a figure seemed to be going round of, was it 140 grand for testing all your employees? Which, clubs at our level don't have 140 grand lying about for that.
No.
But the one thing that stands out through it all has been the absolute mess that EFL have made of the entire process. Yeah. Was it March the 10th, our Newport game was about the last game in League Two?
Yeah.
And then we got called off on the Friday before Grimsby, which was the right decision at the time. And they just said, "Oh, a couple of weeks, we'll see what it's at." But I think once we got to late April, everybody knew the league wasn't going to finish. It was obvious. And here we are, first week of June, and while the clubs have indicated, it's still not officially over because, as you say, the vote hasn't happened.
Do you think the big issue there seems to be League One that are causing the problems? Because we'll get onto them in a minute in more detail, but the issue seems to be that League Two is quite happy to decide what it's done and end the season. Championship seems determined to carry on. League One don't seem to be able to make their minds up, and maybe the EFL wanted to announce it all in one go rather than doing bit by
I think
bit.
one of the major problems is it appears as though there's not actually been anything set in the rules for a season having to be voided. There's no, if this happens, then this happens. From the start, it's been very the blind leading the blind, and
it's difficult. They've not had it's difficult to predict a global pandemic, I guess, isn't it? So it's one of those things that I'm guessing will be enshrined into the rules going forward.
Definitely.
But the issue there is obviously they're having to make up on the hoof. On the topic of League Two, Stevenage are the ones who are kicking up a fuss seemingly and saying, "Oh, we don't want relegation." That issue seems to be complicated a little bit, doesn't it, by the Macclesfield problem, in that they've been charged with another indiscretion, or what you want to call it, disciplinary charge, even if you want. That's probably the right term, hanging over them. That's where the problem comes in. They're just above Stevenage, and Stevenage seem to be.
Yeah, I think they're now 3 points off them. Is it?
Yeah, I think it's 3 points.
Yeah, and whenever this charge gets heard, you can't finish the league until all these charges are dealt with, and on the fact that they've already lost several points twice, it can only be another deduction, can't it? Which would then likely place them in the bottom place. So
you wonder if it might suit them to go down though, because they clearly struggle to run as a football league club, and the fact that they got up
but
this season
it wouldn't suit the owner because it's probably easier to sell a league club than a non-league club.
True.
No, but the whole thing's been a mess, and hopefully in the next week or so we'll finally get the official confirmations, and teams can then sort of move on and get planning for next season whenever it kicks off.
Yeah. Obviously the relegation issue throws up as well the issue with the National League, in that they seem to be waiting for us to make our minds up, and you feel they made the decision quickly, and now they're like, right, well, what are you doing? Because we need to work out how we do this promotion.
And I think it would be very harsh. I mean, Barrow have led most of the season, but Harrogate's argument is it's only 4 points, and Barrow were due to come here. No, it's as I keep saying, the whole thing has been a mess, and add in the fact that Berry disappeared, and they need replaced anyway. So
needs to get back to 72 clubs next season. Because
I think what will happen in the end is one of Stevenage or Macclesfield will go down, and I think Barrow and Harrogate will come up, and you'll get the full 72 again.
Because it's interesting. I noticed actually, because obviously not coming out too far behind Harrogate, but actually their manager did come out and say he'd be comfortable with the idea of Barrow and Harrogate going up. I think because which was a big call. Yeah, that's pretty
that
fair.
That was a very
pretty decent. But then again, he might be looking and thinking we'll be the big fish in the pond next season, so we should be fine. But it's an interesting one. It's one that definitely needs resolved. Let's move briefly on to League One and the Championship. It seems the Championship is going to return in a couple of weeks. No massive surprise. There's a bit of money there, so they can afford to do it. League One's just an absolute mess, isn't it? It's clubs arguing with each other. There seems to be this small group of clubs who wanted to change the rules and make it an 18
You've got big clubs who haven't done as well as
Sunderland. Let's name them.
You've got
Sunderland.
big clubs who haven't done as well as I think they should. Sunderland, Peterborough, and Ipswich. Yeah. Peterborough aren't a big club, but their chairman has delusions of grandeur. But no, at the end of the day, those clubs aren't in the playoffs because they're not been good enough so far. And under the points per game, is it Wickham?
Aren't they? But Wickham would go in there.
Yeah, but they will go out because Wickham will go above them.
Yeah, but then Wickham are in a situation, aren't they? They've said that they can't afford to do games behind closed doors because they're losing something like $300,000 a month for the moment. So it's it's difficult. And then obviously Andy Holt, who
Basically, football just hasn't covered itself in any glory.
Yeah, that's where the problem is. And I think League One's a little microcosm of it, isn't it? In that it's sort of caught between being the standard of sort of League Two clubs where they really haven't got much money, and then, like you say, those big clubs who probably think they should be in the Championship, who have got a bit of money and are desperate to play the games. I think Andy Holt obviously always has an opinion, doesn't he, on matters. And he's obviously come out and said that 140 grand cost for tests, and it just isn't affordable for them, Accrington, to carry on games.
I know a lot of Blues fans follow him on Twitter. He's been very quiet recently, Andy Holt, which, he's normally not. Something's going on anyway, I would say.
I'd imagine they're working towards probably the same solution that League Two has. And I think because there's so many clubs in there who are really struggling financially, I'd imagine that the decision will be made for them, basically, that they'll outvote the bigger clubs and the season will be ended and the playoffs will be played. Which
then brings the threat of legal action from the likes of Peterborough and Tranmere have been kicking up a fuss, haven't they? Because they're in the bottom three, but they've got a game in hand which could maybe see them leapfrog.
But based on points per game, Tranmere will be relegated, I think, by 0.06 points. So you can sort of understand why they're sort of a bit miffed.
Yeah.
But it's unprecedented times.
But on the other side, they're in the bottom three for a reason,
Yeah. They've had issues obviously with
they've been one of the three worst teams,
as well. But they haven't done as well as they probably would have expected. And it's unprecedented times, and there needs to be some give at some point.
Yeah, I would say hopefully when we record our next edition, these decisions will have finally been made, and we will have the actual full League Two lineup for next season.
Yeah, hopefully, and you never know. We might be having a derby against Barrow. It would be typical for Barrow, wouldn't it? They'd be waiting for years to play a derby against us at Holker Street, and it'll be played behind closed doors probably. It'd just be sod's law. Okay, we'll briefly finish up this.
A Boxing Day behind closed doors.
That would be sod's law, wasn't it? Really. All sat at home with the turkey sandwiches, watching it on iFollow. But yeah, so we'll briefly finish off this bit, Dan, and just discuss what's going to happen next season. We won't go into too much detail because we can probably do this in another episode, but we don't know when next season's going to start yet, do we? And it's clear that football's not going to be played with fans until probably early next year. How clubs are going to survive with that? Are they going to have to rely on fans paying to watch the games that I follow or something like that? When does the season start? Do you maybe scrap the cup competitions for one season to fit games in? There's a lot of difficult decisions that are going to have to be made.
So many questions and very few answers at present, and as we've just alluded to, we probably can't start answering half of these until we hear what happens at the EFL. I would say the FA, daft as it sounds, the FA Cup could be at more danger than the League Cup, because the FA Cup won't have the non-league teams in the early rounds.
True, because they might not start till the winter.
Yeah. I personally think it would be about September when we started, with August used for training and friendlies. But it would be no surprise if it was even October,
Yeah, it's one of those things. We can all be thankful that it probably means no leasing.com trophy next season anyway. That's the bonus we take.
Oh, I'm sure they'll find a way to keep that.
Yeah, and
they'll find a way to keep that, don't you, buddy?
The interesting thing, we'll discuss in another episode some interesting comments from Rick Parry about the way the Premier League are treating EFL clubs through all this. Rick Parry obviously being the chair of the Football League these days. He had some very interesting comments, didn't he, to say to the select committee, I think it was, in Parliament about that.
We'll
discuss that in a bit more depth, because I think it's something that does need talked about. I think we can probably leave that bit there, to be honest, because I don't think we can say much until after Tuesday's meeting and we know what's going to happen going forward.
No. Once we hear from it and we make our notes on Rick Parry, we'll get another one recorded.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for this episode. Thanks again for your time, Dan. Always good to have a catch up on all things Carlisle United. So we'll look to get together next week after the EFL EGM to discuss the fallout. We might discuss the financial implications for Carlisle United going forward and look at some of the stuff that Nigel Clippings and David Holsworth, who we haven't really discussed in this episode, have been going through, and we'll go through some of their comments. We'll also hopefully get started on some of the special episodes, so keep an eye out for them. If you've got any comments or feedback, or there's anything you'd like to suggest we discuss, please send them in via Twitter, to @BruntonBugle or by email to bruntonbugle@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and up the Blues.
You'll hear us singing